podcast.
Spunky and Beezer. It's the Spunky and Beezer show. Hey kids, it's the Spunky and Beezer show. The only show where you're Spunky and you're Beezer.
I can't believe you just did that for the intro,
I can't
Mike.
either.
All right, let's do the real one. Welcome to session number 56 of Brain Software with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson.
You're a storm writer.
It's been a long time since he's done a podcast. He's just completed 2 days of hypnosis training for NLP Works and has written a new song to close out this podcast.
Better than Spunky and
Please welcome the Raider of the Hypnotic Ark, Mike Mandel.
The hypnotic raider of the Lost Ark.
That doesn't even,
It doesn't make any sense.
No sense
Yes,
at all.
anyway, I'm back. Chris and I are back. It has been a long break, and we're
2
going to rock
months.
it through this. Listen, guys, I'm not making this up. We just recorded a killer podcast 56.
This one.
And the entire software had somehow screwed up. So we had lunch, and we're doing it again. And
We're
got a
redoing it. It'll be
backup
even better.
recorder. So, Chris, we had a podcast contest
Right.
in number 56. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so in podcast number 55,
55,
Mike, not
correct.
56, we had a contest. It was about our enjoyment of context-free humor, and we talked about this lavender mist and Picthosius.
Yeah, and the bag of
Picthosian bag.
Picthos, yeah.
If you haven't listened to it, listen to it. And
In fact, if you haven't listened to any of them until now, go right back to about podcast 4 or 5. That's a good starting point. Start there until you catch up. This will make no sense
say
otherwise.
That. Go back to the absolute beginning. The content, even though Mike and I didn't hit our groove until about 4 or 5, the content is golden, and it'll make up for the fact that our energy level isn't quite as good until
As
4
now.
or 5. You'll love it. Go back to the beginning. But anyway, if you've been with us all along, 54, 55 podcasts in, I want you to just remember that we talked about that context-free humor in podcast 55. And the contest was very simple. Go out and use this on someone in a hilarious way. And
Making reference to the bag of Picthos, the
Right.
lavender bag, the what's the other? I can never
Well, there was a bunch of
violets.
just go
Yeah.
back to 55
Yeah.
if you want to hear it, and then or read the show notes. They're
Yeah.
on the blog. Anyway, the winner of the podcast contest, to get to the point here, is Jesse Trotter. Now, the contest was go out and use the context-free humor, and the prize is whoever did the best job, and some balance of the best job of using it and the soonest to submit. Then we would award you a free download from our website, some sort of free download, your choice, anything from our website. And Jessie, who is the winner, already is a member of the Hypnosis Academy, so she already has everything. So here's the prize. Instead of us sending it to you, we want you to just email us the name of a friend or family
Tell us
member,
who.
somebody that you care about, who you think would benefit from a particular product. Tell us which one you want us to send them, and we'll send it to them, because there's obviously no point. in
Excellent.
sending
Well,
it
the
to you
less
again.
said, the better. Good work,
Right.
Jesse.
We will have another contest on this
But
podcast.
Jesse's line was a really good one. I remember it was someone had sent a picture of a kid covered in spaghetti or something.
Oh yeah, it was somebody who had texted a picture of a baby covered in spaghetti and said, "Haha, this seemed like a good idea at the time until we had to start cleaning it up."
And Jesse's response,
Was
invoking the bag of Picthos, was,
I smell the scent.
"Yeah, I smell the scent of lavender, Fabulosa, in your kitchen." And I Googled it. Fabulosa is a cleaning product that comes in lavender scent. I thought that was beautiful. Of course, the person at the other end is saying, "Why?"
So if you have no idea what we're talking about, you need to listen to podcast 55. Otherwise, congrats to Jesse. Hilarious,
done.
hilarious. We had a few other good entries as well, but we don't have time to mention them all.
So we just did.
All right, you just finished a 2-day course, Mike, with Hugh Comerford at NLP Works.
NLP Works.
Often the question comes in, okay, what is the difference between a 2-day hypnosis class with Hugh's organization that you teach from, the Introduction to Ericksonian Hypnosis? And it sounded weird, hey? Let me just say that word properly.
Let's do that.
Hypnosis, not hypnosis.
Right, nice. Well, the bottom
versus
line,
the 5-day.
Versus the 5-day. Well, the 5-day is our own training that I wrote a number of years back, a couple of years back, the Architecture of Hypnosis. The 2-day I do for Hugh Comerford's group is the hypnosis module. So it's entirely Ericksonian. And this is basically I'm going in as their hired gun, their hypnotic hired gun, the way I was for Derek Balmer at NLP Canada. So I'm extracting some of the Ericksonian patterns from my 5-day course, and we're teaching it to his students. And we had an absolute blast with some tremendous students. A lot of East Indian students, which were amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah, so it's a great class, and maybe this is just a good time to mention, if you would like to get on the waiting list for any of the classes that we're doing, because the waiting list, especially for the 5-day Architecture of Hypnosis class, is quite large. Head on over to the website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Find the sales page where we talk about the live training, the live class for the hypnosis training, and you'll see a big red button that says get on the wait list. I recommend you do that, even if you can't make the sold out May class.
Yeah, seriously,
because I'm going to
get
use
in
that.
line just in case you want to take it. Because May sold out, I think, about the end of November.
Yeah.
We have, we're opening the doors for another 5-day hypnosis training in June. Because we're hoping to.
Yeah.
There's been so
We
many
can't
requests.
promise it yet. We have to get the room and all
The
that.
next one will be November. So
Yeah.
you'll have to wait till November if you don't get in line.
Anyway, the reason I mentioned the wait list is get on it because it's time stamped. Every time you put an entry in, it's time stamped. And I'm treating that as the priority list for the next classes. So even though you probably can't get into the May class, get on the waiting list anyway, because that's your early bird ticket into the future classes.
You're the ones who find out first.
All right. So
Next.
what do we want to talk about? Well,
Hey, well, your voice is still a little bit rough. And I know it's tied into that San Diego trip you just took and the boat cruises and all the things.
Let's
and
talk about
drinking
that.
off. And, okay.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun in San Diego last week. Not only because it's like minus infinity here in Toronto, but I was at a marketing conference, a digital marketing conference, and it was a lot of fun for me because it's the first time I've ever gone to a digital, marketing in general, marketing conference. It was quite big, about 3,000 people, San Diego, and it was great. I'll share with you folks, and you, Mike, the most important metaphor that I took away is marketing and relationships. It's all the same thing. So a good metaphor was courting or dating. And so here's the idea. Imagine a woman and a man are about to go on their first date, and the woman goes up to the man and says, "Oh, let's try that new Italian restaurant tonight. And while we're having dinner, why don't we talk about the names that we're going to give to our first 2 children?" That would come across
too much of a shock that
creepy,
you're jumping too far forward.
Creepy, right? Or imagine, your first date with a woman, you show up and you pop the engagement ring on her. I mean, creepy, right? Like, This is boom. Like, so to connect this to marketing, if you're marketing and if you're in any kind of sales environment or just any relationship building, the last thing you want to do is when you first meet somebody is like pop a big question on them. Like, do you want to buy this stuff from me or do you want to get married? It's the same kind of idea.
Too much of a jump.
You want to build rapport. You want to build a connection. You want people to understand you. Want them to know you, like you, trust you before you start pitching them on a whole bunch of stuff. And of course, this resonated with me because why do you think a couple of years ago I said to you, "Hey, we should start doing a podcast"? I mean,
right.
I knew it would be a great source of getting people acquainted. It sounded weird. I said acquainted with the hypnosis work.
But it's work because people feel like they get to know us a bit and find out what we're all about and what kind of credibility we have.
And it's two-way street because we get tons of emails from them. And
all over the world. And people come from all over the world to study in Toronto. So this is very good, Chris. It's a good metaphor, seeing it as a relationship.
And in fact, just this morning, I got an email from a woman, Diane, in Ecuador. And she's an American living in Ecuador on a farm. And she told me, "When are you guys recording another podcast?" Because,
She told you? That's a question. That's an interrogative.
She asked. Thank you. Yes. Right. She told me in her email that she listens to the podcast out while she's working in her farm, which is really cool to know that we have people in Ecuador, countries like Ecuador
farming and listening to this right now. Fantastic.
It's absolutely so.
Now, wait, back up for a second. Hello, Diane.
Yes.
Hello, Diane.
Oh, you want to
back it up because when you were there, you were telling me it was quite an interesting story that you were talking to a woman on this conference, and you managed to intersect her hypnotically and influence her.
Yeah, so a lot of times people ask us about covert hypnosis and conversational hypnosis, and let's just, for clarification, explain to people what we mean. I love your definition for this, Mike. Conversational hypnosis is pretty much any of the indirect stuff, the Ericksonian stuff, when you're just talking to people, and they can be aware that you're doing hypnosis with them, which makes it conversational. But which makes it not covert, I should say. But if you're doing conversational, overt hypnosis is when they know you're doing it. And you can do covert hypnosis, which is generally conversational in nature, so it doesn't seem weird.
Right.
You don't want to be looking at someone covertly saying, "Look into my eye." Like it's weird, creepy. Yeah. So if you do conversational hypnosis, but you don't tell the person that at least you're doing it, then it's covert. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm at this conference, and of course it's a marketing conference. So there's people like this woman was a copywriter. Other people are programmers, or other people sell different coaching products or whatever it is. There's all kinds of people in all kinds of different businesses.
Yeah, there's 3,000 of them. Yeah,
I met a gentleman who ran a knitting and crocheting business, like teaching people how to knit and crochet online, which is fantastic. Very interesting. Anyway, you'd not have guessed that if you looked at him. But
knitters and crocheters have a particular look.
well, he just didn't look like, you wouldn't expect him to tell you, oh yeah, I teach knitting lessons online. But anyway, really cool stuff. So I'm sitting at a big round dinner table, about 10 people at the table on a like a little boat cruise VIP event. For those of you who, well, VIP just means you paid a little more for your ticket. So but a bunch of us, about 300 people on this boat over dinner. And a woman sits down beside me, and the usual question, oh, what do you do? And I told her, I'm a hypnotist. Of course, the look of
That'll
fascination.
Get a response, definitely, yeah.
And I told her, of course, of course, you build your credibility even further. I run a hypnosis training business with my partner, Mike Mandel, in Toronto. So fascination, lots of questions. To cut a long story short, she has started to tell me about how she felt that she had lost her ability to do good quality public speaking, to feel comfortable up there on stage. And so I started probing, knowing I was likely to turn this into some sort of covert hypnosis operation.
Right, you're looking for the opportunity.
Right, so keep in mind, I built rapport first, obviously. And in doing so, I started to use the meta model to ask specific questions. So the specific questions that I asked her in this case were, how do you know that you were good at speaking when you were back in high school, which is what she told me that she used to be good at it.
Okay.
And I didn't ask her in an accusatory way, like, you probably sucked. How did you know? It was more like, that's
you're trying to find out what are her evidence criteria so she knows.
And I even use that phrase because I think it's a good phrase. So you were a great public speaker in high school. I'm curious, how did you know at the time that you were good? What were your signs? How did you know you were an excellent public speaker? And she told me a few things. And I asked her, I wanted to get this into a kinesthetic, a feeling state. I wanted to guide her into that feeling state, right? Because that way I could utilize hypnosis more effectively. So I asked her outright, a lot of people, when they are on stage, they get a certain feeling of empowerment. That certain feeling, sometimes they feel it in their legs. Sometimes you feel it in your chest. And I was touching usually that upper chest area right below your throat.
Right.
And she said, yeah, I got that feeling too. And I said, well, where exactly did you feel it when you were speaking so powerfully in front of people on stage, when you had that ability back then? And she started telling me, well, yeah, it was more like just below that throat in the upper chest. I said, that's right. And it's interesting to notice that just thinking about it now, you can become aware that you're feeling that sense even stronger than you were before, aren't you?
Yes, I am, Chris.
She said, I do. I'm making this up. I don't know the exact words I used, but that's the general idea.
You're basically getting her to elicit this kinesthetic state in pieces. And the amazing thing is, well, did she catch on to you?
Yeah, towards the end she did, because she had already asked me, I guess we're going to all have to be careful talking around you, aren't we? And I just said, that's right. But the process was done by then. So what happened is I intersected her and I got her to elicit that state of that same empowerment that she felt, pointed out that she was feeling it. And then I locked eyes with her and I told her that everybody has access to these resources permanently. Once you have them, they don't go away. And I used a metaphor about riding a bike and how you never forget to ride a bike.
Yeah.
And so I slowed down my pace. I looked directly into her eyes and I told her exactly what she needed to hear, which was to reframe her understanding of not having lost the ability, but just having put it back on the shelf for a few years. And now she can take it off the shelf again and use it.
And get to it even easier. Right. She's found the shelf where it is. Now, this is interesting on many counts, Chris.
So the penny dropped, though, and then she's sort of, I'm shaking my head here as if being jarred out of the experience.
Yeah.
And she went, you're doing it on me right now, aren't you?
You said, that's right.
I said, that's right.
That's fantastic on a lot of levels. First of all, the elegance with which you accomplished it after about 4 bottles of wine. And the other thing is, what we're hearing here is, this is verified by the work of Gordon Emerson, PhD, in Australia, and also Watkins and Watkins, the psychologists who did the work in ego state theory. So what they basically did was documented that these different personality fragments or semi-personalities within us are actually digital. They are burned in neural pathways from childhood where axons and dendrites all create different pathways that we can jump into. So if you point at yourself and say, this is me, you're pointing at an ego state, the one that is currently executive or in the Captain Kirk chair running the Enterprise at that moment.
Right.
So when you talk to her, and we use 5 to 15 ego states on a typical day, although we may have hundreds of them, and this is something that therapists run into a problem a lot. The person who phones to book the appointment because they want to quit smoking, they've had enough of it, is not necessarily the same ego state that shows up in the office when it's
Exactly.
time to quit. So what Chris elegantly did was, by eliciting the components of that particular ego state, he called it into the executive. So that was the one that she was then aware of, and gave her the means and the instructions to get there again. Now, for all of you listening, if you have a meeting to go to, or there's someone you normally argue with at a family event, just say to yourself, which ego state do I want on the executive? Well, you're not going to know which one it is, probably, but you can decide on the traits it would have. I want to have an ego state that is, let's say, friendly, but not a pushover. An ego state that is assertive, but not aggressive. One that has access to all of my resources. One that is confident and clear. And by naming these states, you will call to the executive the one that will most likely be able to fulfill all of these different components. So it's a matter of learning to get the right state into the executive. And of course, as Chris has proven, hypnosis is a great way of doing that, even if it goes back years.
Absolutely. So that was really a fun experience for me. San Diego, overall, fantastic trip. Did you want to now jump over to this little tutorial? We talked about giving people this tutorial on something I call stacking negatives, and I learned it from you.
Oh, yeah.
I just named it.
Right, which is the actual name. Yeah.
So for those of you listening to this, we've had this in our hopper for a while, but we keep running out of time in the podcast and pushing
not now.
So now we've got time. Let's do it.
And just so you know, I'm working on 2 new laughs.
Okay.
And I'll be using them through the rest of the podcast.
Right.
One is sort of an explosive. It's more of a... I'm really enjoying that. And one I'm not quite so sure of. It's more like a hamster sort of guinea pig sound. It goes... So
good.
You'll be hearing them with alarming frequency.
All right, fantastic. But it's okay because you admit it.
I admit it, so it's all right. No, stacking negatives.
Stacking negatives
is for amusement.
Yeah, exactly. This is something that I suppose is not really context for humor, because there is a context to it when you're using it. So it's content. It's got content. It's got context. I'll explain where this comes from. We love confusing language. It screws people up, and it's just hilarious. I mean, you wouldn't want to use this in a super serious situation where, somebody's proposing to you.
Yeah, or you're the head hostage negotiator in a key incident.
Or somebody's offering you a job. Or,
right.
Okay, not a good time to use it. But if you're just messing around,
or you're calling 911.
Yeah, we do this a lot. Now, this comes back to the reason I thought we should teach this and break it down step by step is because one of our former students, he was talking to me one time, and I slipped into this language, and he knows what it is. So he said, "It's amazing you could just pull it off so fluidly. How did you learn to do it so well?" And I said, "I learned it from you." But then I thought about how would I break this down as a process if I had to teach it, and I did. So we're going to talk about it now. So before we do, Mike, we should explain what is stacking negatives.
Right. Well, basically, anytime you introduce a negative into a statement, you flip it, and it becomes the opposite meaning. So the humor is, if you take a simple statement, the way to practice this is if you take something like, I will do the laundry. So how would you add one negative to it, Chris?
Well, you would say, I will not do the laundry, or I won't do the laundry.
Right. Now we add another one on top of that. I can't say that I will not do the laundry. Now we've got 2 negatives.
I'm not sure that I shouldn't say that I won't do the laundry.
Now you're adding uncertainty, which is a different thing.
Right.
But that's interesting.
Yeah, actually, good point.
Right.
Well, I'm not certain is a negative, though. It's an uncertain, but it's a different kind of negative.
Well, when you're running it, you can't say that you really don't think it isn't possible to not go where you need to with this. So I won't say it.
So, Mike, are you going to do the laundry?
No, I'm not, Chris.
I'm not saying.
I'm not saying that I'm not going to do it. It's a very odd thing. And when you start piling these on people, it's a lot of fun to do. Just get practice with it. Get a phrase and start adding more and more and turning it into complex negatives that nobody has a clue how to deal with.
Are you not saying that people shouldn't implement this?
Is it not really true that you're not saying that people shouldn't implement this when they're not going to apply all of the things they haven't learned?
Isn't the real issue. I love how you just, we got to explain this for people who haven't been keeping up with all the podcasts, but how many podcasts ago where we taught people the isn't the real issue trick, which is so much fun.
Yeah, someone will be talking about something important to them, and then you just hijack it. Well, isn't the real issue here? And you start talking about
something that starts to relate to what they're saying, but further and further digresses from the topic.
So the guy's got a new straw hat he's wearing on the beach, and he's really proud of it, and he's showing it to you and telling you how little he paid. And you say, but isn't the real issue here that there's people in the third world forced to work for 40 cents a day to make that kind of hat for layabouts like you, so you can lie on a beach here, and they don't have real jobs. And my question is, what are you prepared to do about this today to improve their lot in life? And it totally turns it from talking about their hat to they're suddenly under the gun and forced into a pressure situation.
So any of you who've been listening to our podcast for a while, you can start to see the interconnecting abilities here. You could take that isn't the real issue, and now you can start stacking the negatives. Although we would wait until you master the techniques first, because stacking the negatives is something you really have to work on your own independently just to get that skill set right.
Right, because I'm not saying that you can't just figure it out,
right,
and not do it immediately if you aren't paying attention to what we're not saying.
But isn't the real issue not that you shouldn't ignore all of this completely?
And there's the new laughing being tested.
There you go. So let's bring this down to a closure on this.
I think we're done with it.
Right. Now, well, there's a reason though I want to do this, because we're going to introduce contest for podcast 56.
Oh, I like it.
Which is, if you implement stacking negatives, or the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is called tag team.
Oh, tag team is awesome.
If you implement one of these in a hilarious way, send us an email. Talk about what you did.
Right. Or even better, if in my view, this is even better, because people are just going to send, we always get floods of emails when we do a contest. Yeah, we're not interested in just seeing how many negatives you can put in a sentence. Forget the negatives.
We want the story.
Do that yourself. We want the story, but here's what I would like you to do. We're going to show you how to do a tag team linguistic thing on people, which is really funny. If you can get it on video and send it to us, you and a friend doing this on someone in a bar or something without them knowing, that would be fantastic. A YouTube style video. Now, punking somebody with this. This is really cool. Tag team is something that my South African Johannesburg friend Ryan Penn and I came up with by accident traveling in the car in a snowstorm. It's basically this. When someone starts to talk about something, you're resorting to context-free humor again, so they can't get their head around it. What they don't know is you've got a wingman who is in on what you're about to do. That's why it's tag team. It's really wingman humor. Mm-hmm. So Chris just tried it.
I tried to laugh, but I miserably failed.
So what happens is, let's say you're having dinner and one guy doesn't know the two of you are going to do this on him. And he says something like, he makes just some random comment about, I've got to get a new lawn planted. I have so many weeds in that stupid lawn. There's crabgrass everywhere. My wife is on my case. And as soon as the weather changes, I got to get out there and fill in the holes and get it all fixed up. And then you immediately say something like,
I know what you mean. And that is just like those new light bulbs that I put
you're getting it wrong now. So you would say,
he hasn't had the practice with you. Mike just explained to me, just so you know.
New to him. So
this is brand new for me.
Person's complained about their lawn. And you say, okay, I understand. I was at the supermarket today, and they had this new kind of light bulb that's come out. And it's supposed to be very ecological. There's no mercury in it. It's exactly the same thing.
Right.
And when he looks startled and tries to get his head around this because he's got a PGO spike firing in his brain, your wingman jumps in and says,
there's no difference.
Yes, there's no difference at all. It's exactly the same thing.
Thank you. Redeem myself.
And you both lean in and say it really tight on the guy. It's exactly the same. He's like, what? This other guy is now suddenly agreeing with you instead of him. So he'll try to find his way out of it and say other things. And you jump into another completely unrelated topic. And the other guy says, it's the same thing. And you say, there is no difference. And you say it passionately, like it's something really important to you. And so does your wingman. And it really F's with people's heads in a huge way.
Okay, now, take a moment while you're listening. Just take a moment and think, what is the difference between my first attempt at this, where I got it wrong, and the fine point, the little difference that makes all the difference in how Mike explained it? Yeah. Okay, so now I'll do the big reveal, right? Okay. So if you noticed, I screwed up because I started by saying it's just like, and then I actually didn't even know what I was going to say, so I was looking at the lamp beside me and I made up the thing about light bulbs. It doesn't matter how you connect it. You can connect it to anything, to the camera that you just bought, or
a
the straw basket, whatever. But you don't immediately disclose that it's like. You don't want to say it's like.
Back up.
That's where I screwed up.
You want to draw them into hearing, he's saying something else.
I wonder what's coming.
It reminds me, and you're going, what? How is it? And he says, it's exactly the same thing. And your buddy agreed. Yeah, there is no difference. And you're both really almost wound up about it, intense. And that really shocks people, especially when we go through a second round. You probably put them in trance instantly.
Let's do like one more example, just so people see the whole thing.
Okay.
I'll do the delivery, and then I'll be your wingman on it.
Okay,
So
go
I'm going
ahead.
to play 2 roles.
Okay.
So I'm going to say, Mike, man, I just got this shipment from Amazon for that new lighting kit for the videos that we're shooting, and it was the crappiest quality. The softbox Velcro was just falling apart. It's like nobody cares about quality anymore.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. When we went out last week, my wife and I went to a provincial park, and I was looking at the sky, and I said, look at all the frickin' cumulus clouds we get these days. And they're just fluffy and blowing across the sky, and you get these big, big patches of blue, and she's standing there staring at it. You know, it's exactly the same thing.
There's no difference.
No difference at all.
So now, okay, so hopefully,
Get it on video if you can.
Hopefully that's a good example. I want to also just point out that when you said, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
That is not saying that's like such and such. That's agreement.
Yeah.
That's a rapport building statement.
Yes, that's right.
Right? So just for the fine points out there. Right. Okay.
All right. Hey, I
think-
want to use the word only because this is a really cool
yes.
thing. One of the things, see, I love language. I find it fascinating. And English, of course, is the most complex language in the world. Well, at least the most filled with words. You can say more things in English in more ways than you can say in any other
I
language.
like how you said filled.
Thank you. I stayed on the word, on the F syllable or the F sound. The thing that's intriguing about it is that's why it's the hardest language to learn if you're a non-native speaker. But it's things like the word only. You think of how much you can shift meaning in English with only one word. And you hypnotists out there and budding young hypnotists realize how by transitioning just your language a little bit, you can make an amazing effect in someone else's mind. You can cause something interesting. So, for example, only. If I take a sentence like, I punched Ozzy Osbourne in the face, okay? If I add the word only, it changes it. Only I punched Ozzy Osbourne in the face. Then we move only. I only punched Ozzy Osbourne in the face. I punched only Ozzy Osbourne in the face. I punched Ozzy Osbourne only in the face. I punched Ozzy Osbourne in the only face. I punched Ozzy Osbourne in the face only. Now, these are all different shades of meaning purely based on the position of one word.
Some of them imply certain things.
And we don't even know how we process language, Chris. Nobody knows how we generate it, and nobody knows how we process it. So it's fun to mess around with this stuff.
It is absolutely fun. So, okay, let's make sure we get the contest details clear then.
Yeah, do it.
Going back to the tag team strategy, which is get it on video if you can, or even just audio or whatever.
Sure.
We won't publish it unless we have permission.
Right.
But we want to get a good example of hilarious context-free humor, and it can be that or the stacking negatives, preferably preferably one you get on audio or video.
Right.
And the one that we find the funniest at our sole discretion as judges will send you a free download anything
of your
from
choice
our website.
Of any product. And if you work in the Bag of Picthos or
even
the
better.
Bagman of Edward the Confessor,
Bonus points.
We'll give you 2 downloads.
All right. So that is, is there anything else here
Yeah,
on our
you've got an
agenda?
empowering question you're going to give.
Yes, let's do the empowering question. Sometimes we throw these into podcasts, sometimes we don't. Today we are. So here's your empowering question for Brain Software podcast number 56. When it comes to your personal wellness, whether it be diet, activity, or your mental game, which is the most neglected area of your life, and what are you going to put into action starting right now? I'll say that again. When it comes to your personal wellness, whether it be diet, activity, or your mental game, which is the most neglected area of your life, and what are you going to put into action starting right now?
Nice one, Chris. Really good one.
I thought you were going to throw the laugh out.
No, not on the heels of that. So you're working on it. Give a plug for the classes we have coming up.
Absolutely. All right. So as we said earlier in the podcast, May, Architecture of Hypnosis, totally sold out. Pretty big waiting list. Go to our website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Get on the waiting list. You'll find it at the under the training tab. You'll find the Architecture of Hypnosis sales page. Big red button to get on the waiting list. That will be our cue because it'll timestamp your entry into the waiting list, and you'll be priority access for the future classes. We are likely going to add another class in June if we can make it fit.
And then after that, you'll have to wait till November.
Right, because we've got to accommodate the very large waiting list. In addition to that, we plan on running Mindscaping in June and Graphology in September.
Each of which are 2-day courses.
Right.
And we have people come from all over the U.S. and Canada for those. Please note, guys, our courses sell out early. People get the word on the quality. We have people like Nico come in from Strasbourg, France. He's coming back for his 3rd time. We have people come in from Australia. And Chris and I have had to turn down offers, absolutely true, to go to Brazil to do a training. The Netherlands wanted me to go and teach mindscaping. England wanted us to go and do a 5-day architecture of hypnosis. We've had to say no to all of them.
Yeah, so our apologies
so much
to,
stuff here, and we appreciate the offers, but it's the Field of Dreams thing. If you build it, they will come, and the world is beating a path to Toronto, which incidentally, according to The Economist, won the Best City in the World award.
Very cool.
Come and find out why.
Yeah.
It is awesome.
I suppose the fact that I've gotten a little bit smarter about building a waiting list has helped too. I mean, used to be that we would, get the room dates booked, make the announcement, and have something like 4 or 6 weeks to fill up the class. And by that time, a lot of the people who want to come, maybe they've made other plans or it's their holiday or whatever.
We're letting you know early.
Now we've been taking waitlisted email entries and stuff from people. So we've got quite a big queue. So get on the list and you will enjoy the classes.
Come and study with us in Toronto.
All right.
Hypnosis Central. Let me give you the metaphor for today.
Metaphor.
Another true one, as Milton Erickson said, the best metaphors come from our own lives. About a month ago, I was in Sudbury, Ontario, and I was doing a forensic graphology lecture at Cambrian College for the students, and I was staying at the Comfort Inn. And my favorite bird is the raven. They're my totem bird. I absolutely love them. They fascinate me. And there's quite a lot of them in Northern Ontario. And I looked from the window of the Comfort Inn and saw a flock of ravens, maybe 12 or 15 of them, arcing and swirling in the air about 100 to 150 meters from my window on the 2nd floor. And I kept watching them in these clouds. They swirled around, and I began doing surrogate EFT. And some of you will know what I mean, where you're doing energetic tapping on your meridian points to affect something remotely. Flies totally in the face of everything I understand.
Totally weird.
Totally weird. But I had used it to fix some problems with cats, and apparently you can use it to stop a barking dog a street away. So I gave this a shot, and I just stared at the group and did the tapping regimen and saying the word ravens, just over and over, ravens. And I do the next tapping point, ravens. And after one round, one enormous raven broke away from the flock and moved about 50 meters to the left and began circling by itself. So thus encouraged, I continued to tap and stare at this one now, saying ravens. God is my witness, this bird flew directly 100 meters to the Comfort Inn, practically flew right at my window, and about 5 or 6 feet away just pulled up into the air and flew over the hotel. And it was awesome. Can I explain it? No.
Wow. That's our hypnosis word, right? Wow. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been Brain Software Podcast episode 56 with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. We would love to get your feedback and have you head on over to the iTunes store, leave a rating for this podcast. So far, so good, 5-star ratings, but we want more reviews written as well so that we can share this podcast with the entire planet, more people in Ecuador and all over.
And we'll keep putting them up here for free if you keep listening, and come to Toronto and study with us.
Up in the sky, enjoyment boy, down on the ground, satisfaction lad, enjoyment boy lives, under the waves, so does his best friend, pleasure man, they will always try to enjoy you. If you give them the slightest chance, if you allow them to, they'll be very glad to enjoy you. Well, what the heck was that?